Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the latest edition of our SVG Technology in Action webinar series. My name is Brandon Costa. I'm Director of Digital at the Sports Video Group. Very happy to be with you on this early December day. Today's episode on the show is a strong foundation, how centralization can streamline your media workflow. We know you are very busy if you work in this business, so we thank you very much for taking time out of your day today to join us, and we promise to make it worth your while. Whether you work in professional sports at a franchise, a sports network, collegiate sports, a digital media company, we're obviously in an age of an excess amount of content. You might have high-end professional video to stuff being shot in high definition on your phone. Producers and content creators like us and some of the people you hear from today, we know what it's like to be overwhelmed by an insane amount of video in your life. Stuff that's usable, stuff that's not, and as the season rolls along, I'm sure a lot of you can attest to this, you might have quality video sitting a lot of places on your camera's SD card, your computer, an external hard drive sitting at the top of your shelf that's not labeled in some way. It could be in the camera roll of your phone even. You're scrolling through, looking at pictures of your kids, and all of a sudden, oh, crud, there's that video that I was supposed to send along. It can be pretty hard to access, monetize, and get the value out of all that, but a formalized, centralized video management plan can go a long way in transforming your team into a video juggernaut. So that's the topic we are going to talk about today. We have an example of a team that went down this route of centralization, and they're going to tell us all about the tremendous amount of success that they found with it as a result. So we are joined on the program today by Juan Gutierrez. He is Senior Manager, Video and Digital Production for MountainStar Sports Group. They run a pair of professional sports organizations, including the El Paso Chihuahuas. They're the AAA affiliate of the San Diego Padres. Also, the El Paso Locomotive, a professional soccer team, that plays in the USL. Juan's going to share with you on the show today how he and his team kind of put this all into place, totally reimagined their video backbone, and it led to a very successful but successful 2019 for them. We'll also take a look at the technology that makes all this possible. Also joined on your screen by Robert Gilkes. He's product manager at Sony Electronics. He'll outline the solutions that Juan's team and many other media teams and organizations are utilizing these days to kind of bring chaos to the madness of managing their media's success. Give you a little bit of the lay of the land on how things are going to go today. We've got the chat that's available on the right side of your screen, so please utilize that. Talk to each other, ask us questions. As these two gentlemen are telling you their stories, I will certainly look there to see if there's anything that we should throw at these guys. So certainly send your questions your way. The whole point of this, doing this live, is to make it as interactive as possible, so please take advantage of that. We'll let Juan kind of walk through the timeline of how this kind of all came together, ask him some questions about a 2019 season that found a lot of success for he and his team. Let Robert walk you through the technology, and then hopefully have a bunch of questions for you at the end. So before we get started, Juan, Robert, thank you so much for taking your time out of today and for being with us on the webinar here today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Of course, and Robert, of course, thank you so much to Sony for their success and support of today's webinar that we're able to bring to you. Again, chat's available, so fire your questions away. In the meantime, we'll get the conversation started here with Juan. You're wearing your Chihuahuas polo there today, but you've got two teams that you're responsible for, and two teams that play essentially simultaneously in the same building, in a professional soccer team and a minor league baseball team. Take us through, before we get into the implementation of this specific solution that we're going to talk about here today. First, tell us a little bit about your team. How many people do you work with? How many departments are you servicing? Just kind of give us a lay of the land of what your organization is like when we say MountainStar Sports Group.
So we have two teams. We have the El Paso Locomotive, on the soccer side, a USL team. That started up this year. This was our first season, and we've had the Chihuahuas, the AAA affiliate for the Padres, for 6 seasons. So we kind of don't always have an assigned role. It's kind of in minor league baseball and
Sure.
USL, it's whatever comes up, you have to jump on. You have to end up on the video board sometimes changing panels, or creating content. And for us, one of the big things that we've been pretty fortunate with is we've had a lot of success. The Chihuahuas have never had a losing season. Worst we finished off was 500. And the Padres have a lot of good prospects, so there's a lot of good opportunity for us to market and sell some of the experience here at the minor league level, with a lot of home runs, a lot of highlights, a lot of things that happen in the stands that people would enjoy seeing, even if they're not at the game. On the soccer side, that was a big undertaking for us this year. We play in the same building, concurrent seasons. Our soccer season runs from March. We had a little bit of a playoff run, a successful playoff run that took our season into November. Again, when you're looking at 70 home games on the Chihuahua side that start in April through September, and throw in 17 home games on the soccer side, you're producing a lot of content. You're hosting a lot of games. You're dealing with marketing. You're dealing with creating TV commercials. You're doing all of these things that help out group sales. People want to see some of this content because we're fortunate enough to be able to have really nice cameras and a really talented crew that helps us make sure that we get that content out quickly. But for us, we don't want this to sit there. We want it to get out there and help our brands grow, especially on the soccer side, it being the first year.
Sure. Yeah, totally. So specifically within your team, how many people would you say, I know it might be hard to define, like you say, but how many people would you say do report to you? How many content creators are you fortunate to have on, say, a Chihuahuas game night or something like that?
It's a team of three. Myself, okay. I oversee both sides, and we have Ryan Ortegon, who does a fantastic job on the soccer side. There is some crossover into the Chihuahuas with him as well.
Sure.
And then we have Gage Freeman, who again is my right hand man, and I think he would, he carries a lot of the load on the Chihuahua side, and for us, it really is three of us trying to create content that goes out as far as we can spread it.
Sure, I can imagine. And I'm sure on a given game day, you guys are doing the best that you can to either program the video board, or if there's a drive towards social, just acquire as much content as you possibly can. Kind of lay the land for us a bit where you were maybe a year ago, maybe in the 2018 season. Like you said, you got very talented members on your team, content probably flying everywhere and every which way. What were maybe some of the key things that were making you just kind of like run your hands through your head to go, God, we got to do something to make this a little more manageable for our team?
We didn't know where anything was.
Okay.
We'd have a home run from a guy in April, and it maybe was an important play for us, and we're looking for it in June, and hey, maybe it's on this flash drive, maybe it's on this hard drive, and this content was making it out to social media. Like I said, our production team is really talented. We were able to get some of these highlights out the night of, in a lot of instances, minutes after the play happened. But when we were going back and trying to find some of these pieces of video for maybe, a recap package, or the guy gets called up and we kind of want to show his success at the AAA level, the Padres are asking us for some of this video. We couldn't find it. It would take us 30 minutes to, hey, I kind of remember there was this game where he had a really good night, and I think he was 3 for 5 and had that big home run. And now we're going back and trying to search for it. And
you're searching box scores, like, oh, what was that?
We spent more time trying to find that specific piece of content that we wanted, instead of actually using it and creating something that would benefit, the organization, the Chihuahuas and the Padres. And, again, for the community, that you start building that relationship with that player, he gets called up. Now you got now you're playing in San Diego, you got a fan in El Paso.
Sure. Okay. So let's talk about specifically wanting to centralize your workflow. How did that conversation start? Was that something that you were kind of barking for a while about, and it finally came to fruition? Was there an aha moment, or was it really just kind of this grind that you're talking about where it was just enough was enough? And when you decided that was a leap you wanted to make, what were some of the steps that you needed to do in order to kind of begin real conversations about it?
We knew we had a problem. We had 5 seasons worth of highlights where guys that again, we're really good prospects for the Padres, that we were, trying to do a 5-year recap video and trying to, recreate some of that energy over 5 seasons. And it just was really, really hard to find some of this stuff. So in talking to Robert and Mike DeRoche over at Sony, we actually spoke at IDEA, I think it was Indianapolis. And that's when we kind of said, hey, look, a lot of these solutions, what you guys are offering, would actually work really well for us. We started off with, we kind of knew already at that time, this was in the summer, we kind of knew that we were going to be getting involved with soccer. And soccer for us was going to be a big undertaking, because we have a total of 3 facilities that now need to receive the same content in various different ways. We have a graphic designer that works offsite. We are in the stadium, and then we have a training facility where most of our content gets shot, that it's 25 minutes away from where we're at. So instead of driving that file back and forth, we were looking for a solution that was just going to be able to push it up and spread it out to whoever needs it. Ryan, really talented photographer, he was able to get us photos from training. We were starting to build new content and graphics to create some energy over at a downtown office, without having to do any work other than, hey, let's just push this up to see. So for us, it was one of those things where we knew that it wasn't going to be sustainable having to go back and forth. So soccer kind of was really the driving force between getting everything organized, and it's worked out really well so far.
Sure. I know one of the conversations that we have a lot, especially on the college side, and I know that there's some college people in the webinar here today, and they're probably going, "Oh, 2 sports? That's cute." But when anytime you could know that this will make a better case for you and your team, how did you go through the avenues needed in order to sell this to upper management, and what was maybe some of the advice that you would give to anyone, whether they're pitching a VP, a CEO, a president, or an athletic director? What were some things that worked for you as far as selling this as something that would bring bring every part of the organization a benefit?
Well, on the professional side, it's always about getting people in the stadium, getting people to buy the merchandise, and getting people to ultimately, support your brands. So for us, this was a way to show, hey, look, if we do this, we're going to be able to push out so much more content that's ultimately going to help drive people to the stadium, come watch us on TV, and it's just going to make life so much easier. So, looking at obviously everybody's concerned about budgets. We're going through our budget process right now, but looking at it, the price wasn't anything that was out of the question. It wasn't like I showed up with a number and they said, no, there's no way that number is going to work. It was something that was very reasonable. But, for us, the biggest thing was, hey, look, we're going to be able to streamline our workflow, and we're going to be able to push out so much more that's ultimately going to help the brand. Obviously, there's got to be some follow through with that. But we were then able to kind of test out, and we kind of started, hey, sending some of this stuff to our company president, and this was part of a demo with Sony, sending some of this media out, and like, oh wow, great, you can review this without me having to leave the comfort of my house, my phone, wherever it's at. Now you have this content. So for us, it was big on getting the demo from Sony. That way everybody could start seeing what it could do. And once we had it, it was like, yeah, we're not going to give it back. We're not going to not move forward with this.
Right. No, that's great. But before we get deeper into Juan's workflow here, again, reminder that the chat is open. We got a question or two already that we'll certainly get to, but I want to work Robert in here real quick. Robert, as someone who's worked closely on this project, since we're kind of discussing the early stages of kind of getting buy-in at your organization and getting introduced to this way of centralizing, what's your experience been like working with organizations that maybe come in, they know exactly what they want, they've got a plan, or they come in and they just got their hands up and they're like, look, man, I need some help. How do those conversations start, and what might your advice be for someone who maybe does want to open that conversation but doesn't know where to begin?
Yeah. So it's interesting. I actually started in sports. I worked in the NFL for 5 years. So I was kind of in the same position as Juan and I'm sure many others on the conference have been in. But really, one of the things that I think has been a really helpful way of positioning it within organizations is to empower other groups within the organization. So one of the great benefits of using solutions like these is that not only is it going to help your team be faster about building content and organizing your content, but now it allows you to empower outsiders to be able to access that content without having to go through you. So your team is no longer the bottleneck. So you can take some of that weight off of your team's shoulders, but at the same time, folks in other departments, they like to be empowered and they like to be able to just go in, search for what they want, pull it out, do what they need to, and not have to go through your team in order to do that. So the more, outside teams you can pull in and show them the benefits of the tools, it makes it that much easier to sell organizationally.
Sure. Yeah, Juan, we've talked about that a bit leading up to this and even into here, and how, and we hear this from a lot of other organizations who are you may be implementing a technology that is, sitting at the top of your wish list, but it's like, if I could show other people, whether they're in media content creation or marketing or stadium ops or whatever, if you can make this kind of a company-wide benefit that, can serve many, many masters, not just you can get what you want out of it. And then you can also, kind of change the organization. We've talked about that, but did you run into any obstacles along the way of, because buy-in can be difficult, especially when it's new workflows. People get comfortable in the way that they do things. Did you face any of that? And if you did, what were some of the things that maybe you did outside of that initial demo to kind of help people along the way?
Yeah, for us, it was now there's something else that I have to do. It's
right.
Contribute to this. So for us, the biggest thing, and again, I'm not saying that money drives ultimately what we do, but
Sure.
For us, it was working with corporate partnerships. It was, hey, look, we're going to create something, as a sample that you can go that you can send a link. It's as easy as sending a link. They can go view it. They can give us the notes back, and then we can keep working on that same one. So once we started there, it was so much easier. So then they started uploading new logos for this different sponsor, and hey, such company has a rebrand. We're gonna give you their content. And now it started working as Robert was saying, externally, where others were contributing files to us. Where, hey, now we don't have to search through this email of 8 chains of different content, as far as like when they sent us that PDF file that had their new rebrand. Now we know it's in the specific company folder. Corporate partnerships can go and look at it, make sure that everybody's on the same page with it, and it just made everything so much easier. Where now nobody was saying, "Hey, that's not the right graphic." Well, you guys uploaded it to us. It is the right graphic. It is the right. So that helped out a lot. But then
okay,
again,
so let's
seeing that everything was there, and you could go back and forth on your computer. You didn't have to get up and come to the control room to go verify something. It was so much easier to get everybody to fall in line with what we're trying to do.
Okay, so you got everyone, most everyone, who knows, everyone on board, at least on paper, and the season starts, and now you want to prove the value of this thing. As you got it started, what were some of the things that you needed to do? Was it, and it could be everything from, kind of planning out with you and your guys, all right, this is how we're going to use this on a game night versus how we're going to use it on a random Tuesday afternoon. This is how we're going to label and add metadata to all of our content. It's one of those things where you have to put a lot of work up front to set you up so that there's very little friction throughout the season. What were some of the things that you needed to do so that your team felt like this wasn't a burden and this was something that was going to accelerate them to do more than they normally would?
We had a good idea of how we wanted to approach things. We knew that there were certain elements that were going to happen every night. You'd hope to score a run every game. Sometimes that doesn't happen, but there are good fan elements. We know that we're going to have some good dance cams. We know that we're going to be getting some of this content regularly. So some of what our workflow is we hire a freelancer who shoots for us just different video early on in the season and throughout the season, as we kind of want to give it we kind of want to refresh things, where he's focusing on only children for for a whole game, where now we have a bunch of kids waving and cheering and doing a lot of things that we can use season long for promo. Sure. Then he switches over to shots of food and things like that. So we knew we wanted to approach that, and we knew we wanted to have a good base off of that. So that happened, and then as the season kind of evolved, it changed. Where now it was hey, look, we have to send. We host a lot of special events here too. We're a downtown ballpark, so it kind of helps out with being able to get everybody here. So we're hosting special events. We hosted the AAA All-Star game, and for us, that was one of those things where we knew that we were going to have a lot of last-minute guys show up, and we needed to find highlights for them. So we proactively reached out to every club and said, hey, here's a link, upload to this link. Now we have footage of everybody. Now we have what their walk-up songs are. Now we know, we have this relationship with every team, and then we can then return them video. We can return them highlights of their guys actually in the game. Mm-hmm. So for us, especially early on in the season, we wanted to make sure that we were going to be able to get I wouldn't say the most out of it, but enough out of it to justify the expense. We have a still photographer, does a fantastic job on the Chihuahua side, and he uses Sony camera, so he was uploading straight to C. So now Gage, who I referenced earlier, does our social media. Now within a matter of minutes, he has the photo of the guy's home run swing, and on the video side, then we're able to share that video as well, and it's all getting pushed up to the same spot. So that's kind of how we approached it initially. As we kind of evolved a little bit, there were more changes. On the soccer side, the coaching staff said, hey, look, it'd be good for us to record every session, every training session, and work with the individual guys as to, hey, you kind of need to work on your positioning here, or I don't like the way that you attack this. So now they started using it as a tool as well. So again, it's flexible enough to do both. So it kind of changed over time.
Okay. There is a question in the chat that kind of elaborates a little bit on that. You can see Glenn in the chat there. How could you I don't know if it's putting a ballpark number on it, but how much time? I know it's probably one of the least sexy things that we do in this business, but it also might be one of the most important ones that allows you to do sexy things later. How much time did you invest in, or how much do you currently invest in logging games and adding metadata? Does MILB help in any departments there at all? Get a no on that one. How much time do you invest in this kind of stuff?
So initially, it took us a little bit longer. We kind of were trying to figure out, hey, what are some important things that we're going to need when we're trying to find that clip. So this was so much easier on soccer because you have a game about every 2 weeks, a home game every 2 weeks. So we started with a couple of things. We knew we wanted to figure out what kind of play it was. So metadata was, is it a goal? Is it a save? That kind of thing. And we started getting a little bit more involved, where we said, hey, look, we have some specialty uniforms that we wear. So what was his uniform color that time? Who was the opponent? So I would say about midway through the season, prior to that, we were probably spending, about 2 hours. And again, there's, sometimes you get a lot of highlights, sometimes you don't. On the baseball side, it can be very, very either or. We were having 20-run games where the opponent was putting up 18. And then on the soccer side, there were days where we couldn't, where there were no goals. I mean, maybe there was 3 shots on goal the whole match. So it kind of varied. But once we kind of figured out what metadata we wanted, like I said, about midway through the season, now it's about 30 minutes to an hour after a game.
Okay, again, that's not bad at all.
So much easier to reference things back when you're searching for it. Now you got, this guy scored a goal and he was wearing what uniform color? Mm-hmm. So big time saver there.
Sure, that's tremendous. All right, Robert, we're talking a lot about the different things that Juan had to put into place internally to make this all work, but let's talk about the solution itself. What exactly is Juan and MountainStar Sports Group using? I know you got a little bit of a display, some slides to take us through that kind of outlines what exactly the solution is. If you kind of want to give us a little teaser on what it's all about, take us through those slides. Certainly walk us through as best you can, just in case people are just listening in their headphones or if it's a little blurry for them. But tell us a little bit about what technology you guys gave them in order to make all this work.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to share, I've got some slides here that kind of illustrate the tools that we implemented for Juan and his team. So there's two main solutions on our side. One is our C Media Cloud platform. The other is our Media Backbone Navigator X. And basically what you have there is Media Backbone Navigator X is an on-premise asset management system. C is a cloud-based collaboration tool. So the way that they work together is it allows you to have a central repository where all your assets can be organized. You can tag and log all of your assets, but it also allows you to use the cloud for some of its efficiencies. So doing things like sharing content very easily and also being able to get content in from external sources very quickly. So here's an example of some of the main uses that when we were speaking with Juan and his team, we identified that they could use each tool for. So on the cloud side, you had things, like I said before, access from anywhere, doing things like archiving in the cloud because it's very cheap and cost efficient, wireless camera connectivity. So with all of our Sony cameras, you're able to push that content directly from the camera to the cloud using Wi-Fi or LTE, making it very fast to get your content back to your facility or to anybody that needs access to it. On the on-premise side of things, doing things like permissions and rights access. So we talked about this before, empowering those other groups, allowing them to log directly into the system so that, they might want to search for something, find it themselves, but also restricting them so that they can't, accidentally delete your content or what have you. And things like workflow automation and NLE integration to just speed up the time for them to create their content. So this is kind of what their setup looked like before. Very oversimplified, but each of their editors had some sort of direct attached storage, either local storage, maybe a hard drive that they were using. Their cameras were completely separate, and it was a completely manual ingest process. So after getting in C and Navigator X, this is kind of a 30,000 foot view of what things look like now. So on-premise, you have Navigator X as the on-premise MAM and really the central repository. And that's bridging the gap for all their editors, anybody internally that needs to access the system. And it's also bridging the gap between all their storage volumes. So if they've got NAS storage today, or if maybe they're adding storage in the future, Navigator X kind of serves as that bridge between all of those volumes. And then up in the cloud, you have C, which enables a bunch of things for them in the cloud. One is on the left-hand side there, remote contribution. So being able to get content directly from our cameras, directly into C, or maybe just somebody on their laptop on the road. They can send file requests out to even external users without giving them access to C. So enabling that sort of external contribution directly into C and having that automatically synced into Navigator X, it eliminates kind of that multi-step process today where you might get an email with a Dropbox link or some sort of a share link where they're going to download a file and then have to ingest it into their MAM. They can automate that process and get that content directly into their MAM. And then on the other side, on the right side there, using the cloud for archive, we use AWS Glacier as the backend. And it's extremely cost effective. Today it's about $4 per terabyte per month. So when you compare that to expensive on-premise storage, we do offer on-premise archive solutions. You have things like LTO, maybe even NAS storage. those are a lot more expensive in a lot of cases than archiving in the cloud. And if you're not pulling that content back very often, it can be an extremely cost-effective way to do things. So archive in the cloud, and then also sharing of content. With C, it's very easy to take any content that's up in the cloud and then share it externally. You can share out just a link via email, and people can review that content, send back comments, do things for like review and approval, or download that content if you give them access to it. So what we did here with the solutions is created sort of a hybrid environment for them. They have access to all of their on-premise content and all of their different stores locations, all of their editors, and anybody internal can access that content. But then they can also leverage the cloud for some of the cloud's great efficiencies when it comes to both ingress and egress, so remote contribution and sharing content, and then also the cost effectiveness of archiving in the cloud.
Sure, it's really, really interesting stuff. I'm glad you kind of elaborated a bit on the deeper storage stuff, because I think storage in the cloud environment, that makes a lot of sense, and it's made a lot of sense for a lot of people for a while. I'm interested in your take in leveraging the cloud in whether it's live or just a highly active sports environment. It was always something we heard a lot about at, all these various trade shows that we go to. But it really felt like at this year's NAB that it wasn't just something that people were talking about. It was something that people were like, I'm doing this now, or I really want to do this now. How have you personally, and maybe Sony as a company, seen that dial change, if at all? It seems like that acceptance of the cloud is starting to mature quite a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So early on, the big concern was security. Over the years, that's kind of gone away, and then it became a big concern about the cost. If you're pushing up these super high-res files, it's going to cost you a lot to pull them down. So in a lot of cases, the workflows didn't make sense because people were going to wind up spending a lot more money than they intended. So with our system, what we've done is you can push your high-res content up to the cloud. But we do a lot around proxies and proxy workflows. So especially with like our cameras, instead of pushing high res up to the cloud where it's going to be very expensive to pull it down, the cameras are creating a proxy in camera in addition to your high res content. So while the high res is getting recorded to the internal memory card or what have you, that proxy can get pushed up to the cloud. And in a lot of cases, if you're publishing to social media or to the web, a 1080 proxy at 9.6 megabits is going to be more than enough quality for those sorts of distribution outlets. So instead of pushing that high res up, you can just use those proxies. They're very lightweight. You can do some editing in the cloud if you need to, and then push that straight out to those sources. So, you can absolutely push high res into the cloud and do a full cloud-based workflow if that fits your needs. But we found for a lot of people, it's still somewhere in between, and it's really a hybrid. A lot of that high res content is remaining on premise, and then a lot of the stuff that you want to get out very quick for maybe social or maybe to get to your website very quickly can be done with a proxy. So that's what we've kind of created with the two systems, and that's sort of a hybrid workflow, and it really allows you to be flexible and do both.
Cool. Robert, thanks you very much for all of that. Juan, for you, the learning curve with the cloud, was it much for you? What was that experience like? Or had you had an experience? I don't know. How was that?
No previous experience with it, but it's pretty straightforward. We knew what we were pushing up to the cloud, and we knew how we were getting those files back, just because that bridge with C and NavX was there for us. So it just made it very easy for us to not have to worry about, what's it going to cost us to pull this down? So it was very, 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 very streamlined. I mean, I can't even think of any major challenges we had. It was very, very simple.
Okay, well that's very good to Here, as far as the entire timeline for you, I mean, there's always things that you learn along the way. Is there anything that really stands out to you about this entire process of investing in the technology and streamlining and centralizing your workflows? Was there anything that you wish you knew, or something that you would advise someone of to consider before they, not even before they dive into this, but make sure you anticipate this coming, a month in? I don't know. Was there something that you wish you knew maybe a year ago that you're like, oh man, we had to figure that out along the way?
IT departments. For us,
I can't tell you how many times I get that answer.
And again, I'm not trying to pick on any IT departments or anything like that, but they're getting as much information to them. Especially, we outsource IT, and they do a fantastic job. I'm not trying to burn any bridges here, but they have a lot of work to do, and sometimes they don't understand what concepts. What it is that you're trying to accomplish with it. So for us, a lot of that was, hey, we got to bring this firewall down, but why? It's like, well, no, this needs to talk to this, and we're gonna operate this way. So for us, I would like to have had a little bit more knowledge in the IT world, so that we could have facilitated that. Where it's easier if you speak a little bit of IT, and I'll be honest with you, I don't have a lot of knowledge in that area. So there were some challenges there. I think more than anything else, I think, as we kind of evolved, we kind of realized what the power of these tools were. And, it's essentially limitless. For us, it turned into, we've had so much success with it that looking back at what we were doing in March, if we would have implemented some of the things that we were doing in June and July, things could have been a lot different for us. And again, there's, none of us have the time to sit down and really fully develop a plan. So a little bit of it was, hey, this is what's in front of us. Let's set this up to operate this way. But the biggest thing that has helped us is being able to share externally. For us, we're in a small building. It's easy to walk down the hallway, put something on a flash drive. Even then, that's time consuming. That's 5 minutes that you don't want to spend. But being able to share with everybody else, where they just it's easy to have a download link. It's easy to have an upload link, and being able to register that asset in our system and have that have that file accessible whenever we need it has been huge.
It really is the golden advice for like everything that we've talking about in the last couple of years at SVG. We're just going to start selling T-shirts. I think that's over communicate with your IT department. That's the only thing. It'll solve you so many headaches along the way. I can't tell you how many live streams I've heard colleges have get knocked off because the IT team's like, the heck is this spike? Bye. And they just knock it off. Like you didn't communicate in advance. It's probably no truer words have ever been spoken. Robert, for you, are there any, in what ways do you guys at Sony, and you mentioned this a little bit along the way, in what ways do you guys support a client like Juan or any of the other organizations that you might work with as they're onboarding this and this is becoming a part of their everyday life? And maybe what are some common pain points that you see along the way that you guys help them out with?
Yeah. So the biggest thing is, first, we want to understand workflow. Everybody's workflows are different. And workflows kind of, it's the Wild Wild West. Everybody has different workflows. There's 1,000 ways to do the same thing. So it's important for us to understand where a customer is today with their workflows. And then we'll kind of advise on what it could look like with the solutions. Where there might be efficiencies, where you might be able to completely cut steps out of your existing workflow. And then we like to show some things that maybe they weren't doing before, but they'll be able to do with the solutions. So that's kind of the 3 steps we usually take.
Okay, very cool. All right, as we kind of work our way towards the end here, please send us questions in the chat if you have any. We'll sneak some in before we wrap up here. We got some time for that. A question from Chris that you probably see there, Juan. And now that you're centralized, I guess this is kind of the next steps question. I know a lot of people will implement a new thing. They get used to it. They get their sea legs. They work through the whole season, and then they go, okay, now here's what I want to change now that I know that the X, Y, and Z has happened. Here's how we're going to leverage things in year two. As you look to the future now, as you're sitting here in your quote unquote off season, none of us have off seasons really, but in your off season here, what do you foresee in going into year two as some of the opportunities that you might like to tackle now that you're comfortable with this?
Yeah, for us, it's the external contributors. We have an event tomorrow. We're announcing our new kits, new jerseys, and we've been going back and forth with our corporate partner on this, and they've been sharing media, we've been sharing media, and it's kind of created this. This approach where we don't have to physically go to their building, they don't have to come to ours, and we're able to share information and what it is that we're looking at amongst ourselves, and then have a better thought out concept. So for us, it's more of that. We deal with a lot of partners. We work a lot with the city of El Paso and different other entities, and for them sharing that media to us, I think that's one of the next big steps for us. Where, hey, if you can send it in an email and we don't have to meet, that's probably better for a lot of us.
Okay, very cool. All right, well, we're kind of coming up towards the end here. We want to wrap up here. Everyone's been very generous with their time here on the program, both you, Juan, and Robert. Robert, before we wrap up, any parting words from you and the team at Sony?
So as far as parting words, we have obviously the two solutions that we talked about today. We kind of pair them very tightly with all of our cameras. But not just our hardware, but it works with other systems as well. So if there's any interest, you can visit SonyMediaCloudSolutions.com, and that'll have information about C and put you in touch with our team.
Cool. That'll be great. And Juan, anything from you? Anything you want to plug?
Yeah. Well, I would say, try to formulate a plan. If you're going through, trying to manage content and trying to figure out what works and what doesn't, reach out to these guys. They're phenomenal. The resource, they're hands on. You're not gonna just give them a check and then they disappear. No, they'll work with you, and as things evolve, they help out tremendously. So my advice would be have a plan and demo some of this stuff out. These guys are fantastic at doing that. I'm not trying to put Robert on the spot there or anything, but they're fantastic about kind of getting you started and then helping you build to where you want to get to.
I certainly agree with that. We love working with everyone over at Sony. So Robert, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate you sharing the technology and the expertise with us. Thanks for joining us. And Juan, thank you so much for sharing your story with our crowd. It was a pleasure getting to know you during this experience, and we wish you nothing but the best in year two with the Chihuahuas and the locomotive.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much to everyone who joined us on the show today. Again, thank you very much to Juan and everyone at MountainStar Sports Group for sharing their story with us. We thank you very much to Sony again for sponsoring this webinar and help bringing this content to you. If you missed any of the program or would like to reference it later, we will be making a full archive available of this webinar. You'll be able to find it probably by the end of the week on our YouTube channel. We will post it to sportsvideo.org, and it will certainly be in an upcoming edition of the SVG Insider email newsletter, which if you don't get, definitely go to the site and sign up for. Again, my name is Brandon Costa from Sports Video Group. We thank you very much for joining us, and we look forward to speaking with you next time. Until then, please take care.